Develop speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity.
We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. As if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy.
Silence! The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature.
Don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts.
And now, Reality Rants with Jason Bermas.
And who loves you? And who do you love?
Good morning, everybody. I am Jason Bermas. This is Reality Rants. It is presented by Red Voice Media. We are live Monday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And you can catch the second hour video format only at redvoicemedia.com/uncensored/Jason. Give it a go, or join us on Podbean for the rest of the broadcast in audio format. A lot to talk about today. The lead story is Tucker Carlson and him finally, in my opinion, giving some discernment as to the Twitter files that is beyond this Mockingbird mainstream narrative that Elon Muskernuts is either a villain because he's empowering disinformation and white supremacy. That false narrative. Or the other false narrative that he is a knight in shining armor for free speech, when he himself has talked about freedom of speech versus freedom of reach, will openly have censorship algorithms, and what's most important is really only presenting a limited amount of information to the public. Now, to his credit, apparently, but again, I'm going to call out Taibbi on this one too. Matt Taibbi recently did an interview with Russell Brand about his interaction with Elon Musk and these Twitter files, etc. And in it, he said that Elon said he could write whatever he wanted. Well, if that's the case, Matt, I would really appreciate it if we get some of the source documentation, scans of them, especially on who and how many were on this list. Now, the real question is, how long ago did this type of moderation and integration with the Defense Department, fusion centers, the DOJ, etc. start? I would say from the inception to some level. Now, let me say this. Obviously, when you have platforms like that and you have people that will post illegal and grotesque material that has no place anywhere except for in an evidence locker room as they try to convict the people that are sharing that or doing that. Let's just leave it there. You're going to have to interact with law enforcement, period. But it's almost as if here on this show, they always say it on InfoWars, tomorrow's news today. A lot of what we talk about eventually does become mainstream. And although the story of ex-intelligence officers hasn't gone mainstream yet, Tucker finally talked about that too. Remember the other day we listed off all these intelligence officers off that Twitter thread that worked there? Well, he did pretty much the same thing in one of his monologues last night. It was later in the episode. I almost wish that he had opened with it. I would feel a larger audience there, more impact there. But hey, beggars can't be choosers. So that's kind of the lead story today. I'm going to throw in some more credit. I mean, you'll see it when we do it. He also brought up the chemical attacks in Syria and evidence on that. And to his credit, we discussed WikiLeaks. And once again, WikiLeaks was such a threat because here you had people posting the source material. In other words, just base journalism. This is what we have. This is where it's from. Go. Go. And then the mainstream media has a conundrum because, of course, there are certain aspects of all these drops that they want to ignore in unison, which they do. But when too many people start getting involved on the internet and interacting with one another, it's changing the narrative cycle anyway. And in one respect, it's taking people who were very much people who followed the narrative in 90% plus of the cases. When you look at, for instance, 2016 and that election, and 2015 and the run-up of it. All right, when it really got down and dirty with those DNC emails, and they hated this. They hated this. When WikiLeaks added fuel to the fire and said, look for signs of human trafficking, oh, they didn't like that. They didn't, listen, John Podesta, Hillary Clinton, they don't like any of it. But when they threw that out there, and then all of a sudden, you have some very, very shifty things being done and said, it explodes on the internet. And then you got to kind of infiltrate it Cass Sunstein style and sprinkle in other false narratives that are seemingly over the top but believable because so much of this information is over the top. Okay? So that's why they hate WikiLeaks. They also hate any type of social media platform that's outside of their control. That's why I have also today clips from really around the launch of Android. We're talking about almost 15 years ago. At a speech by Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google, and then the parent company Alphabet, Bilderberg's steering member, talking about the vision of a new world order then. Okay? And basically, there's so much techno-fascistic indoctrination just using slightly different language that we're accustomed today. It has to be looked at. And he actually names off social media. He says they're here to stay. The only one that went by the wayside was one called MySpace. And it is always curious to me how quickly MySpace just got dominated by Facebook when I felt it had a far superior product, and many other people did as well. Usually, at least what I was accustomed to as a young man, it was okay to have a dueling platform of just about anything, right? There was Burger King, there was McDonald's. Those are the big two, Pepsi and Coke. But Facebook and MySpace didn't last long. And you have to wonder if Facebook from its inception had signed on to be a Trojan horse civilian system of the state and an outright intelligence gathering tool, whereas MySpace possibly resisted the idea of that type of control and infiltration. I don't know. I'm rolling the dice on that one. But it would certainly make sense because we know how heavily embedded the Justice Department, the National Security Agency, the military-industrial complex in general, is in social media and in Twitter. Embedded. And that's another great thing about this Tucker Carlson piece that we're going to play, is that he makes that point. Was it set up as an intelligence gathering tool? You know, Tuck, it's time for you to learn the terminology that they use. Because, I wouldn't call it a Trojan horse civilian systems if that wasn't their own name for these things. Okay? Their own name for these operations amidst information, internet, and psychological warfare. I'd probably have some different terminology for it. Tuck. So we're going to get there in a minute. I want you to thumbs this up, subscribe, and share if you're watching on YouTube. By the way, shout out to everybody that makes the Bermas Brigade possible, from people like Tom Dedamore, who are tipping over at Rockfin, and many others, to people like Scott Bailey, who are moderating right now at YouTube. We really do appreciate it. I appreciate it. BitChute, been around for a long time. I remember years ago, I did an interview with them when they were doing featured spotlights on creators. We're posting over there as well. I think it's another good alternative. I'm not sure if they brought live streaming to the game yet, but I think it's something that's in the works. Going to be hard to be in the works when banks won't give them their money. You see how this works? They tell you to build your own thing, and then they shut you out through privatized banks and organizations, payment processors, etc. And this is now becoming the norm. This is what the social credit score is and always was. Play ball, or we'll just reach out to these companies who have free speech, and they'll ban you because you've obstructed their terms of service. You said you liked Cool Ranch Doritos when everybody knows nacho cheese is better. That's how absurd it could get. Because so much of this is an exercise in humiliation, and for you just to be subservient to a certain narrative. So this hasn't gotten enough play. They reached out to me. All they want is their cash, and it is HSBC UK that is withholding this from them. Give BitChute its money. And I shouldn't have to get a warning on other social media sites or anywhere else when I click on a BitChute link that it could possibly be harmful to me. You can't watch snuff films on BitChute. Okay? As far as I know, they don't condone hardcore pornography, or that gets moderated and taken out when people do dare do it. And yet it's kind of ignored when it happens on YouTube. Because it happens on all these social media sites. People put up some real demonry. Okay? I don't get a warning for YouTube because they're part of the narrative control. They're part of the system. They have the military-industrial complex contracts with NASA. They're achieving quantum supremacy and building AI with NASA. All right? So many people love that acronym, not a space agency. And look, NASA does a lot of stuff in space. And I think space is a varying thing. Obviously, when you get outside of our atmosphere, gravitational pull, etc., I don't think it's just an eternal vacuum. There's a lot going on. But they've weaponized space. That's a real thing. That's a thing that NASA's very much a part of. But then it's also into cybernetics, artificial intelligence, biomimetics, transhumanism in general, and many other things. And they put on this face, this narrative, we're going to the moon! I have my new NASA hat. I'm going to save it for a really juicy NASA story. But Orion is back. Orion is back. Just so everybody knows, they did it. And you got to love NASA's commitment to acting like they're so lowbrow. I've had so many people comment about this document saying that the NASA logo is all blurry, Jason. It's not real. This is fake. It's fake news, Jason. Come on. It's NASA. They couldn't get this right. This is 2001. July, pre-9/11, by the way. You can see it. I'll get out of the way. It says so right here. And this little future strategic issues there. And this was made with PowerPoint. I do think that it's almost a running joke, to make them look like so innocent. NASA's so innocent. Ooh. That their website looks so old and degraded. It needs an overhaul, NASA. Eventually they'll do it, but it's just so basic. And yay, we're back. We did it. Except for there are no people in it, and we have to take your word for it. But we went back. Artemis, woo. Orion, woo. All right. I'm going to stop with my ranting and raving on NASA. We'll actually probably get back to that later because I want to talk about nanosat networks via Elon Musk, Eon propulsion systems, cube satellites, and more. So we are going to get to that later. But first, I want to play the Tuck. All right, the Tuckin's on fire yesterday. So before I do that, let me just make sure we get to the actual right spot of the Tuckins. And I believe there we are. So let's have him take it away. Go, Tuckster.
Like a lot of people, we always thought that Twitter was a social media site. Then why were all these intel agents working for Twitter? A lot of them. Could it be that Twitter was actually a propaganda tool and an intelligence gathering operation for different governments?
But again, it goes beyond. See, this is another place he gets it wrong. Different governments. This is an international cartel. This is a predator class. Our military industrial complex is openly interwoven not only with NATO nations, but other allied nations as well. We have to start looking at this in a broader spectrum than nation states, Tuck.
Totally possible.
Oh.
More on that next.
So there it is. Oh, the Tuck. They're doing some metal tuckings right here. They're selling Defending Freedom Tuckers. He's defending freedom, apparently. And look, man, it's corny, but show me somebody better on the mainstream media. Show me somebody else who covered this story. Seriously. Even in the alternative media, I haven't heard enough people, if anybody else other than Tucker Carlson, he's not alternative, has anybody else put it the way I've put it on the quote-unquote Twitter files, that we should be getting these files from a decade plus ago, since the inception of working with law enforcement and authorities, when starting to curb speech, when shadow banning anybody, the lists of associates, the list of terms that have been shadow banned? Shouldn't we know that? Oh, man. Look at it. You can get yourself a metal tuck. The Tuckins.
Let's say you were trying to staff a social media site. Who would you hire? Well, obviously, since it's a tech business, you would hire tech people, coders, software engineers to keep the place running. Then you'd hire an administrative staff because you had to, some lawyers, a caterer, a flack or two, maybe an interior decorator if you wanted HQ to look good. But how many spies would you hire?
Good question. How many spies would you hire? Well, again, you're watching this show, you'd know that it was quite a few, and we were just scratching the surface.
Well, probably none. Spies have nothing to do with the mission of a social media company. They would not be needed, and you wouldn't hire any opera singers either. Yet, for some reason, Twitter seemed to need an awful lot of spies. The upper ranks of Twitter, we now know, were absolutely loaded with people who once did intel work for government agencies. At least 15 of these people, and possibly many more.
And possibly many more. And the entire mainstream media, other than Fox News, all right, and obviously Newsmax and OAN, and really even within those, no one's talking about what Tucker's talking, but the entire other part of the mainstream media is just saying this is a nothing burger, that this is business as usual, that this should be going on, that there is no problem, because they're taking out all the misinformation. And if we don't do that, Anthony Fauci's in danger. What? Excuse me? That's the kind of Johnny nonsense that's out there. No one's saying, hey, by the way, look at all these ex-Intel officers that are inside. Nobody.
Most of them were hired in the wake of Donald Trump's election. Now, what were these people doing all day at what was supposedly a social media company? Well, that's the question, isn't it? We know that James Baker, who came from the FBI, has been accused of secretly censoring incriminating internal files before Elon Musk could release them to the public. Baker was fired for that. So that's some of what James Baker was doing at Twitter.
But again, we still don't have the files. That's a misnomer. I want the PDF download. That's why Assange is so dangerous. That's why WikiLeaks is so dangerous. And the other thing about them is they were really good at PR. And that's another thing they don't like. They don't like when you take their tools, their Bernaysian psychological operations tools and methods, and use it against them. After all, just like technology, propaganda is really benign. You can have propaganda that is based in fact and truth and is not skewed. All right? Instead, we get propaganda all the time that is based in half or quarter truths, sometimes outright lies, painted in the perspective of virtue and benevolence. Okay? So when you look at this, WikiLeaks was always good at letting people know they were good on social media. That's another thing they don't like. That's why you can't have a level playing field on social media, because more people are interested in that type of thing. And even those that aren't are willing to take a look at it because so many people are interested. And then it brings people over to the truth. And again, they gave us the documents. I've yet to see the Muskernuts throw up a PDF file so everybody can throw up an article. That's great. You want to help out Matt Taibbi. All right. Fantastic. Or Barry Weiss. Great. Great. Even that shows you that the Elon PR team knows what it's doing. Trying to paint him as a savior. Using, former heroes of the left. People that were on Bill Maher's Real Time all the time. Right? Always a featured guest. As the people that broke these stories. Hey, let us all break it. Give us the documents. So, Tucker, I got to correct you. We're getting little bits and pieces. There is no documentation Jason Bermas can download. And he really wants it. He's been asking for it since the beginning. By the way, almost 300 watching on YouTube. Can we get 150 thumbs up? Not just 100. Let's get it going.
But how about Charles Smith of Twitter's Trust and Safety Department? Smith joined Twitter after working at U.S. Cyber Command. Or how about Jeff Tokadjer, formerly a director of Naval Counterintelligence? What was he doing? Or Kevin Michelina, or Doug Hunt, or Mark Jaruzelski, or Douglas Turner, or Karen Walsh, Russell Handor, Vincent Lucera. All of these people once worked for the FBI as well.
How about that?
Their colleague Jeff Carlton came from the CIA. Patrick Conlon once worked at the NSA, and so on. And it wasn't just American intel officers who found a home at Twitter. The company hired foreign spies, too. In January, Peter Zatko was fired from his position as Twitter's head of security. Reportedly, Zatko lost his job because he complained about the level of control that foreign intelligence agencies had over virtually all of Twitter's operations.
And again, this is because, and it's an open secret, and Tucker knows this, from the documentation that we have gotten from WikiLeaks, combined with the documentation we've gotten via Snowden and these programs and Five Eyes and the integration of other governments, we have built up this system where it's beyond the nation state, even in a compartmentalized fashion. So much of the technology transfer over to China that's made their model now being promoted because it put them in power was given to them on purpose via establishment politicians, bureaucrats, and companies like Lockheed Martin within the military-industrial complex that has done classified work really since the inception of black sites and the idea of born classified and the executive within the executive. That's what's really going on here. But again, Tucker's the only other. I have not seen anybody else talk about this. Tuck's the one.
According to Zatko, there were operatives on Twitter's payroll from other governments, including China and India, and they had access to private user data. And those are just the details that we know about. Elon Musk was asked recently how many former FBI agents are currently employed by Twitter, but he wouldn't say.
And again, thank you, Tuck. He won't say how many people are working there that were formerly intelligence.
It's all pretty weird. Could it be that while the rest of us imagined that Twitter was a social media site, a place to vent about politics and sports and the Kardashians, could it be that Twitter was actually, maybe primarily, a propaganda tool and intelligence gathering apparatus for a variety of intel agencies? Well, yes, that's possible. And you can see why various governments would want access to the information that Twitter had. Keep in mind that Twitter's direct message DM feature functioned for many years as a kind of private text app for some of the world's most prominent people. So if you wanted to know what high government officials really thought, or if you wanted to know what well-informed sources were telling reporters off the record, you would want to see those messages.
Not to mention a plethora of other tools via honey traps, via operatives on that. But he's right. Just like any other digital communication that's out there. And I'm sorry, guys. Don't think that your signal is protecting you. Anything you put out into the digital ether can be gotten a hold of, is essentially forever when you're talking about these agencies. That doesn't mean that they're, run by omnipotent gods and that they're able to get anything and everything like that. But it means that relatively easily, they can get metadata like that if they're requesting it. And then if they want to dig even deeper into archives and do a little dicka-dicka-do cyber style, some real investigation, they can get things you can't even imagine that you wouldn't remember. I mean, we're at the level now where whether you like it or not, they're creating mind files on people. Okay? It's not even in the discussion to the predator class as to whether you have privacy or not. We play a lot of Bushnell clips in here. I don't play the one enough where he talks about a global brain, how that established global brain has really become Google, and that it's going to be listening to all the phone calls and reading all the emails all the time in real time based in its algorithm. So when he says this, that its primary function could be a tool of intel, all right, this is a Trojan horse civilian system.
Did Twitter executives ever share those DMs, those private messages, with anyone outside the company without a warrant? We strongly suspect that they did. The proof, of course, resides on Twitter's servers, along with a lot else. Think about it. If Twitter has been functioning as an arm of government intel agencies, and clearly it has been, then its internal documents will contain information about all kinds of things. Not just about the silencing of Donald Trump. Not just about Tony Fauci's buffoonish lies about the COVID shot. No. Information about big history-shaping events. The sabotage of Nord Stream 2, for example. The supposed poison gas attacks in Syria. Both of.
Think about that. And we're going to play the clip where James Mattis gets asked about that. Remember, WikiLeaks. Again, the OPCW documents. And this is, I'm going to bring it back, because this is where I'm probably the proudest of Tucker. Because he's right. That within these DMs, you're getting some of the private thoughts of establishment power types. Because just like I do and many others do, they use that DM feature to reach out to others that they don't necessarily have an email for, or they do have an email for, but they want, people check that more than that on the magic box, right? Or they don't have their phone number, et cetera, et cetera. So that DM feature is rife with intel.
COVID shot. No. Information about big history-shaping events. The sabotage of Nord Stream 2, for example. The supposed poison gas attacks in Syria, both of them. The imprisonment of Julian Assange. Why is he there? The theft of incriminating emails from the DNC. What was that story? The motive behind the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And much, much more. In other words, Elon Musk now has control of the most significant trove of secret information ever to reside in private hands. So far, we have not seen much of it, and you have to wonder why we haven't. Let's hope that we do.
And that's how he ends the segment. Let's hope that we do. Yes, Tuck. Let's hope that we do. And the bottom line is, again, the question about Duma is one most Americans don't even remember Syria at this point. They don't even remember it was a conflict. Assad gassed his own people? Like, that's a sentence that maybe was ingrained, embedded if they want to bring it back. But for the most part, it's not even on the radar. Okay? They sure don't know about Timber Sycamore, Operation Timber Sycamore. That was the Central Intelligence Agency getting involved with that conflict from the get-go so they could bring in NATO and the UN and the white helmets.
Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for your service.
What do you hope to achieve by any military action that the administration might eventually decide to take?
Congresswoman, I don't want to get, as you'll understand, into the details of a potential decision by the commander-in-chief due to this latest attack, which is absolutely inexcusable. I believe there was a chemical attack, and we're looking for the actual evidence. The OPCW, this is the Organization for the Chemical Weapons Convention. We're trying to get those inspectors in probably within the week. You know the challenges we face, where Russia has 6 times in the UN rejected and made certain that we could not get investigators in. We will not know from this investigating team that goes in, if we get them in, if the regime will let them in, we will not know who did it. They can only say that they found evidence or did not. And as each day goes by, as you know, it's a non-persistent gas, so it becomes more and more difficult to confirm it. So,
see that? He sets up plausible deniability of lies, and we're going to do it live. We'll do it live! Okay? We'll go right over here. We'll type in OPCW. Okay? And then we're going to type in Wikileaks. Because they did get them in there. And they're the OPCW Duma docs. Not many people talk about these. And you know what? This was a big contention I had with the Trump administration. They got Palpatine looking like demons via Mattis and others, the Mustachio Bolton in that administration. Warmongers. Pearson Sharp of OAN got there very quickly and established it was imagination land that a chemical attack came out. Now, the OPCW report comes out, and it whitewashes it, and it says, of course, there was an attack. You know, it blurs all the issues, uses semantics, Bernaysian talking points, right? And says, yeah, it happened. And then you look at the internal WikiLeaks Duma documents of whistleblowers. None of it happened. None of it happened. Not a damn thing. Click on it right here. Here are all the releases. There, you can read the emails. Okay? This is it. It's there. Didn't happen. They had to leak them. And meanwhile, I still got to watch other members of the Trump administration saying that the idea that no chemical attack happened in Duma was Russian disinformation. Oh, yeah, that's right. While they're saying Russia about Trump, the administration's going Russia about our military-industrial complex. When we're firing off missiles right after Trump, on 2 occasions within a week, said it's time to leave Syria. Weird. So I'm going to do the Schmidt thing. We may do that in the second hour. I don't know. We'll see. But I had this, I think it's like 12 minutes of Cindy Sheehan. And when we're talking about anti-war, when we're talking about Wikileaks, we're talking about fictitious attacks in the Middle East. I was watching this morning. I was going through some of the videos that I wanted to bring up, Mattis being one of them, because obviously Tucker Carlson talking about the chemical attacks, it's a big deal. He has a huge audience. Most people, again, even in that audience, he gets new people all the time, and other people really aren't paying that much attention to foreign policy still. At least that type of foreign policy, and they need to. It's hard to believe this video is almost 15 years old. I believe it's the 7th anniversary of 9/11. I think it's 2008, 2009 maybe, but I'm pretty sure this is in 2008. In fact, I'm 100% sure because some of my extras were on this on Fabled Enemies. Like 7 years after 9/11, very, very close to being 15 years old. Cindy Sheehan had already been ostracized from being a darling of the left then, because it was only cool to be anti-war when you could make it about a right or left issue. As soon as they started to bring the Barack star in, okay, and they gave him a Nobel Peace Prize out of the gates for nothing, acting like he was some man of peace. He was the drone bomber. Drone bomber. What are you talking about? I mean, the guy escalated the war of terror to another level. And Trump, you did the same damn thing with your drones and your proxy wars and your deals with Saudi Arabia and via Yemen. You did the same damn thing. And we better own up to that. How are you going to fix the system if you can't be honest with yourself? You want to play team baseball. Not here. Sorry. No. So Cindy Sheehan had already really been ostracized by the mainstream when they started to tell her story, because, again, they had to, she didn't realize at the time, but they had to manage a narrative of anti-war and her son being killed unjustly in Iraq based on lies, no weapons of mass destruction. That's as far as they wanted to take it. They didn't like it when Cindy Sheehan started hanging out with people like me and talking about 9/11 and then talking about on a larger scale. I call them the Predator class. She calls them the Robber Baron class. Okay? Does it very articulate, smart woman. I'll never forget the time I spent with her in Pittsburgh. Really great stuff. I got an on-the-fly interview with her there. Ended up just a small piece in my film Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined. So I'm going to play this video of Cindy. And, it's a little echoey. There's some thanks in the beginning. She actually thanks Luke Rudowski, who's still doing great things. We Are Change. He's on the Timcast show all the time. Timcast. Tim Pool puts out a tweet yesterday about Neuralink. Some in sarcasm about worshiping Elon Musk in the brain and fears, but then kind of kowtowing to the wonderful things it's going to do medically. And then from the second one, Musk actually gives him a couple fire emojis. That's how big Timcast is. He gets to interact, with the billionaire poster boys. And then he replied, some of it's scary, some of it's promising. Look, I'm trying to empower people with technology. You think they're going to empower the common person with this technology? Get out of town, Charlie Brown. They abuse everything. So this is what, to me, an actual liberal looked like 15 years ago. Somebody who was smart, articulate, anti-war, who wanted to bring people together. She actually makes a comment in the first minute and a half, 2 minutes about being right, and by that meaning being correct. We try to be correct here as much as possible. Period. It's always about right and wrong, not right and left. So let's get 200 thumbs up, and here comes Cindy Sheehan from 2008.
I love you all. So I just want to thank, that was quite a welcome, thank you. What was I saying last night for all you that were there? Girl power. Yay, women, give ourselves a round of applause. like to thank Luke and Heather and Manny and Danny and everybody for putting this together and for inviting me. I've been invited before, but this was the first time I was able to make it because, as Danny said, I'm not so popular anymore. So when I was popular, you know, people were inviting me all over the place. Now I'm not popular, but you know what? I'd rather be right than be popular. And what I mean by right, I mean correct. I don't mean, you know, you know what I mean. And, you know, so many people have sold their souls to this empire. Whether they've sold them to the Republicans or the Democrats or the military-industrial complex, it's all the same. It's all the same. They all have the same goals. They all get paid by the same people. And I like to call the Democrats and the Republicans a war party. And you can just tell since Obama's been president, everything that he and his Justice Department do to protect the criminals of the Bush regime. And they protect each other because they all want to do the same thing. They all want to have the same power that the previous administration had. And I really seriously feel like crying because there's a lot of pain in this room. There's a lot of pain in the world. And, you know, my heart is with the first responders. My heart, I mean, every time I find a first responder and we talk, you know what they tell me? Well, I was just doing my job. But I believe that what they did on 9/11 was above and beyond the call of duty, for sure. And when I meet with the family members of 9/11, they all tell me we didn't want our country to go over to other nations and kill other people for what happened to our family members. I met a very good and dear friend of ours, who's Michael Berg, whose son was beheaded in Iraq. And he was beheaded right after my son was killed. And when I met Michael, I said, you know, it's awful what happened to Casey, but I can't imagine, you know, your child being beheaded and everybody watching it on the internet. And he said, well, when I meet family members, I say, at least I got both half of my sons to bury. So I want to speak for people who aren't here today, who can't be here. You know, we have vets, and like I said last night, my dear friend Mathis Chereau is here, and David, right? David, right? Daniel? I can't hear you. It starts with a D. Daniel. You know, they're giving better service to their country by seeking the truth and by fighting against the empire than when they were being misused by the military-industrial complex. Those are heroes to me. And I haven't been in the room for every speech, so I might not even be telling the truth. But it's just you guys will set me straight, I know. I haven't heard anybody speak for the Iraqis and the Afghan people and the Pakistani people. And, you know, I know we have a horrible police state. I've actually turned around to cops that have been chasing me, and I'm saying, what the hell's wrong with you? I'm a grandma. You know, you're chasing me when there's scoundrels in the White House, when there's scoundrels in Congress. And the only reason I turn around and get sassy with them is because I'm 53 and I can't run that fast anymore. cops with Jason in Pittsburgh, with Luke in Pittsburgh. We got tear gassed. We got shot at with rubber bullets. And I'm like, oh, you better not hit me. If you hit me with a rubber bullet, you better have a real bullet because I'm coming after you.
I love this woman. That was, I'll always remember that time in Pittsburgh. Everything she's saying is spot on. Because I don't think it's cool, just like George Carlin didn't think it was cool, that if I'm a brown person in some second or third world nation and my military wants to get caught up in some conflict with a boogeyman, I don't think it's cool that we get occupied and we're the beta test for the Great Reset. You heard it here, folks. Whether you like it or not, the reality of the war of terror was massive police state control, massive military intervention, no rights, biometric scans of the population, making all males 16 and older enemy combatants, drone warfare on a level you cannot imagine. Read 1st Platoon. So you want to talk about their repackaged nonsense? That's the model. Except for you don't have soldiers anymore. You got robots. You got robots. You don't even have the human empathy for people. So, man, we got about 6.5 more minutes of Cindy talking here. That's so important. Everything she said is so spot on. And, you look at those beheadings and who's really behind them. And a lot of people forget about that one video with a big green screen in the back that was supposedly taken from a McCain staffer that nobody could explain. In fact, we'll do it live because that's what we do here, because a lot of people aren't familiar with that, and I don't think I've covered that for Red Voice yet. So, McCain staffer beheading video. Let's see if we can get it. Let's see. Video shows unbelievable. Let's see. Is this it right here? I believe it's right here, right? Is this the green screener? Man. You know what? There it is. Yes. Good. So it's right here. So, never got disproven. Never got proven one way or another. You look at the time, I think that was the Jihadi John videos. Looks a lot like one of those. And to imagine that, again, our Pentagon, our military-industrial complex, the proxies that we've set up wouldn't do something like that. And that's not to say that man's son wasn't beheaded. You bet your ass he was. All right, the real one's there. But it blurs the line of reality. It shows how these things work. Hell, they even aggrandized it Hollywood style in Iron Man 3. A lot of people don't talk about that aspect of the Marvel movies. It's so easy to trash them now. It's so easy to trash them. In so many of the backstories, they're warning you about a one world government. They're warning you about a new world order. They're warning you about a military industrial complex that lies, that hires actors like Ben Kingsley to pose as bin Laden style terrorists. It's one aspect we don't talk about enough. Okay, is that a pre-programming? Is that a revelation of the method? That's up for debate, but that's really happening. Let's go back over to Cindy. Again, she does such a great job in this speech, and it's just so heartwarming to have been able to spend time with somebody of this, a human being of this caliber. Okay?
What gives them the right? They're just like us. They're our brothers and our sisters and our neighbors, and they're enforcing for the criminals. They're being enforcers for the criminals. And so, everything happened to us in Pittsburgh, but we stood up to the war machine, we stood up to the military-industrial complex, and it's horrible, it's awful what's happening. the National Guard for protesting. I don't think anybody's been murdered except today in Afghanistan. Afghans were going out to protest the burning of the Quran, and German troops turned their weapons on them for throwing rocks. And at least one person was killed. They're there by the thousands, standing up to people with guns and bombs and drones. And we can't even get out in the streets and to help them fight off their oppressors over here. You know, Gary was walk through body scanners and stuff at the airport. I hate that. I hate flying. When they always say, "Can we look in your bag?" I always say, "Sure, if you have a warrant."
And now it's just commonplace, those
They always
scanners.
look at me like I'm nuts. And I say, "Don't you know that this is a legal search and seizure? That you should have a warrant, and if you don't have a warrant, you should have probable cause that my bag is going to do something illegal?" And just because I'm traveling doesn't give you the right to take away my Bill of Rights. And every time they say, "You want to go through one of the body scanners?" I say, "No. You know, I'm not going through that. Do what you have to do, but I'm not going through that." But do you know, in Iraq and Afghanistan, women are strip searched by the U.S. military. Women who are, I mean, I'm not modest at all, but these women are very, very modest. They're being strip searched by the people who are occupying their country. They're being raped. Their bodies are being burned. The evidence is being hidden. We just found out that troops were taking souvenirs off the bodies of dead Afghans. And you know what? That's not something new. This shit didn't start happening on 9/11. It's been happening for hundreds of years. So that's what we need to recognize. And our pain and our love and our compassion shouldn't stop at the border. It should extend to all the people who are harmed economically, socially, physically by the acts of this U.S. empire, and that's everybody in the world. My heart was broken on 9/11. I know yours were too, and many of you lost family members, loved ones, friends. We all lost somebody that day. And I tell everybody, when my son was killed, your son was killed. But when the people of Afghanistan and Pakistan and Iraq are being maimed and dispossessed and killed, there are brothers and sisters too.
And you know what? Again, that's why we played that James Mattis clip. And that's why we'll give props to Tucker Carlson for integrating the Syria conflict, for even talking about Nord Stream. You know, now it's extending to people who look a little bit more like us. Maybe people will pay attention more, but no, you'll just do what the media tells you to do in most respects. And this is another one of those things where people get caught up in this right-left thing. And even those on the quote-unquote right and conservative side, they want to side with Ukraine because they haven't come to grips with you don't always back the military. You don't always back the blue. We're all human beings. We all can make mistakes. But those in power with the real motives that are directing these things, they're not making these type of mistakes on behalf of altruism or freedom. No. They're doing it on purpose to exploit the system, both financially and then to empower authoritarianism in more places and legitimize that as well.
And that's what we have to think about. They're the people who are being held under occupation. We're the occupiers. It's up to us to do something about it. I'm almost done. I have this big end thing pointing at me. I am a 9/11 truther. I do think it was an inside job.
And by the way, I always say international intelligence operation. I don't think George Bush had anything to do with it. But again, this is why they didn't like Cindy Sheehan. And they didn't like putting her on the news when she went beyond what their narrative for her was. Powerful woman. Real liberal.
Cheney had something to do with it. But I just want to leave you all with this thought. You know, everybody else has been, we can change, we can do it, and we can. We're the only ones that can. You know, the people are the only ones that changed everything.
Oh.
It's been good that people have changed. The people into slavery. The women got the right to vote. The blacks brought on civil rights. And it's the regime, the oligarchy, the plutocracy didn't want any of those changes. Why does it take decades of struggle? These are all of our human rights. They're not rights to be bestowed on us by the politicians and the bankers and Wall Street. They're rights we're born with, whether we're Americans or Afghans or Pakistani or Iraqi. And the Bill of Rights only wrote down rights we already had. They just wrote it down. But I want you to think that on 9/11, 2001, and 9/10/2001, and 9/12/2001, and yesterday, and today, and tomorrow, 30,000 people, mostly young people, will die of starvation. Every day, 10 9/11s occur around the world. It's time to start acting locally, but thinking globally. Thank you.
Killed it. And that type of starving, by the way, has only been exacerbated by the conflict in Yemen. That's where the real genocide is happening. Because of the war zone, because of the conflict, it's causing starvation. We only got a couple more minutes. Okay, a couple more minutes here on Rockfin, Rumble, YouTube, and Twitter. And then you're going to have to come over to redvoicemedia.com/Jason. We're doing it 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. Premium section of the broadcast, $10 a month or $100 for the year. Lock it in for a year. Give it as a Christmas present. Give the gift of the Bermas Brigade. Before we do it, I want to give you a little sampling of Eric Schmidt, because this is the next part of the broadcast. Here's Eric Schmidt in I believe this is right around the same time. I think 2008. It's the launch of the very first Android phone on the heels of the iteration of the iPhone 3G or something like that. And him talking about the quote unquote new world order and the future of technology. Okay.
So what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about the world as we see it today and a little bit about businesses and technology, and then take your questions. With this kind of an audience, you have a lot of ideas and things, and I learn just as much as you when we do this. I've been thinking a little bit about the structure of the world, right? The New World Order, as everybody says.
As everybody says, the structure of the world, the New World Order, as everybody says. Not everybody. Maybe the clique that you hang around with there, Eric. So this actually, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clips, each of them at least a minute long. This one over here is about 3 minutes. But I want to play these to show you, again, this has been a plan for some time. They've taken incremental steps. All this talk of a great reset is really repackaged New World Order propaganda. All right, that NASA document is such a blueprint, 2001. Okay, Trojan horse civilian systems. Trojan horse civilian systems. Folks, we're going to go over, if you want to listen to the rest of the broadcast for free, it's the infowarrior.podbean.com. I'm going to give the cue to my producers. We're moving over to premium, so one at a time. We're going to let you go. Rockvin, thank you so much. We will see you later.